In today's gaming landscape, you would be forgiven for forgetting that portable gaming had to start somewhere. Back in the 90s, it wasn't like it is today where the Switch can play full console games while you were riding the train or sitting on your throne. Nah, we had to deal with massively stripped back experiences that can be best described as desperate attempts. Of course, this wasn't a hard and fast rule, but more often than not, things were a bit crappy. Of course, it didn't stop developers from trying. Even Nintendo had to start at the bottom in this regard, and nothing shows it quite like Super Mario Land. Bearing the scary responsibility of the first ever portable Mario game, does it live up to this prestige? Well, kinda sorta. Super Mario Land is a Mario game. Yup, it sure definitely kinda is. Believe me, this one will be quite short thanks to that revelation. You run and jump and grab what few power-ups you'll find in order to make it to the end of the stage. As basic gets. What sets Mario apart from the others that follow in its footsteps are level design, the world the devs created, and the feeling of movement. Super Mario Land lives up to two of these things, kinda, but it does miss out on one thing. Now, while basic movement generally feels fine, it's a tad too slippery, something you'll be familiar with if you played the original Super Mario Bros. But this, being on a Game Boy, makes things a little iffier when trying to land on small platforms. Especially when said platforms are just going to vamoose under your Italian Plumber shoes, which they do surprisingly often. Most of my deaths in this game came from sliding off the ledges, or, the more frustrating thing to me, the sloppier hit detection of enemies. While jumping on enemies is all well and good, sometimes you'll land on them only to not land on them. Taking a hit when you land square on an enemy is frustrating stuff, but the game gives as much as it takes by sometimes giving you hits you don't deserve. I am shocked by how many enemies I killed by accident. Last weird thing about movement is the general speed of things. Mario is quite large on screen compared to the prior games, obviously to compensate for being on a smaller screen, but he moves quite fast as well, meaning running through a stage can be a death sentence. Taking things nice and slow is the order of the day here. Other than that, sometimes the controls can feel a tad delayed, and the game's speed often means you aren't going to be able to do things in quick enough succession to survive. It's at times like this where your best course of action is to not engage, which seems like rather poor design to me personally. This leads us to level design because it's the queen bitch that makes or breaks a slippery handling, and it's acceptable for Mario's first Game Boy title. Due to this being on a tiny Game Boy cartridge, there isn't a lot of variety in the challenges you'll face. You'll still go down pipes, jump on Goombas, Koopas, which explode this time for some dumbass reason, and a good number of other unnameable things while trying to keep yourself on the good side of the platforms you'll find hovering around. There really isn't anything remarkable to mention other than that there are 2 one-off shooter stages, and that is fucking weird. What isn't acceptable that is familiar from older games is the Fire Flower. Normally, it's fine, until you notice that the flames bounce incredibly high and over most enemies on top of the fact that you can only shoot one at a time. The other needs to die before you can shoot another. Overall, the game is playable, but it's definitely lost its appeal throughout the ages thanks to some weird handling and pacing. At least the plain Jane won't last too long as it's quite short, sitting at only 4 worlds. I actually beat this game in a single sitting. Although, I'll be honest, save states made this game a bit less frustrating, that is for sure. That'll teach you to steal a life from me, damn game. As for the thing the game didn't quite nail, I will have to admit, is the world. Granted, this is a Game Boy game, so imagination may vary, even more than the good old NES often, but I don't think extra power would change the fact that this game is friggin' strange. This feels less like a Mario game world-wise than Super Mario Bros. 2 did, and that wasn't even a Mario game to begin with. You go through Egypt Land, Easter Island Land, and Japan Land to save not Princess Peach, but Princess Daisy, making this her first appearance. What a first appearance this is. I'm sorry, Princess, but I think you left your face on a different platform. This also means no Bowser, which doesn't happen too often with Mario. Overall, things look fine for the Game Boy, but games that came later show just how lacking this one is. My review footage comes from the Retron 5, so I get to play it all in its blown up glory, and boy does it ever look like a Game Boy game. Due to the size of the games, there isn't a lot of variety visually either, but I suppose it gets the short job done. Dated upon release. Poor thing. Scary Maya head guys running full speed at you aside, the music is charming enough. What few tracks the game has, that is. Just like the visuals, what you'll hear is pretty lacking in variety, but that doesn't make the music not memorable. It's definitely the best part of the package, as it's not like the game aged well in any other way. At the end of the adventure, it's sad to say that Super Mario Land doesn't really have a place outside of a museum. Curiosity, nostalgia, or just a desire to play all the Mario games is the only real reason to pick this one up anymore, and I'd argue that all those reasons are stupid. It's 1,000,000% playable, but it just doesn't have any appeal to back that up. You're better off playing Super Mario Land 2, as that game is actually good. Still, I can't blame anyone for wanting to give this one a go. It's freaking Mario after all. While you can go wrong, I'll have to give this one a score that might seem rather harsh. I feel Super Mario Land doesn't hold up, but it falls just upon the average, awarding it a 5 out of 10. While that may seem harsh, a 5 out of 10 is average, especially when it comes to retro games, so anything above that is something that either holds up well or offers something worth checking out. Still, do you have any harsh words for my harsh words? Do you agree with my assessment? I'd love to know in the comments below. Any likes and subscribes show my time was worth it, and any comment is appreciated so I can engage with you. I'm always down to hearing differing opinions on the classics, even ones that aren't quite looking too hot right now. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed. Until next time.